Week, you guys have been giving real timid responses. Hello, guys.
Hello, Troy.
Hi, Derek.
Hello.
So just as a quick introduction before Leah takes the wheel, as to what we're going to be speaking about today. Now, see if you can guess from these statements. We're going to be speaking about maybe the reasons why after you accept the health message and then you walk in through Tesco and then you see that Krispy Kreme station just there and then you start salivating and thinking, maybe I should just go and grab another one. But you know in your heart, you said, I'm going to stop eating sugar, I'm going to stop eating eggs, I'm going to stop having milk. We're going to be speaking about the reasons why people see that sign on the cigarette packet saying, smoking kills, and yet they still pull up another cigarette. We're going to be speaking about the reason why next year is the year that your diet is going to start, or next year is when you're going to get your six-pack, even though you said that last year and the year before, and probably the year before that. Can you guess what we're going to be speaking about today? Habits. We're going to be speaking about habits. Now, Leah just has a few quick announcements before we get underway.
Okay, so good morning, everybody. I'm not going to lie, I'm feeling a little bit depressed by how subdued everybody is. Because we're saying good morning, I was like, Good morning, everybody. Good morning. I'm not going to be that annoying person that's makes you say it 4 times until it's loud enough. But first of all, on Sabbath morning where it's like, good morning, I was like, good morning, just to make them go away. I'm not going to do that. I just have a few brief announcements. As Derek mentioned, thank you. I'm here representing a young women's ministry called Filiae Day. The banner is up on the screen. Our booth is at the back. Just very briefly, it's to let you know some of the things that we've got planned for the coming year. Filiae Day is a ministry for young women that was established by a small team of people who still like to consider themselves young. We're kind of edging towards the not young anymore. And we began the ministry basically to try and start something for the young women of the North England Conference. What we could see is that a lot of people have a lot of things to say about young women, about how we dress, about the kind of relationships we have, about how we live our lives. Everybody has an opinion, but sometimes the people that are sharing that opinion are people who don't know what it's like to be a young, well, I shouldn't say they don't know what it's like, but they haven't been young for a while. So you all know the conversations you have with your parents. As I said, even me, I'm not as young as I was, but back in the day, for example, I'd say to my mum, I need to use the phone to ring my friends. And she's like, I didn't ring my friends in my day. I came home from school and I did my chores and that's what I did. She didn't understand there was a disconnect because we're a different generation. And so it's all well and good for adult women, middle-aged adult women, to be leading out in young women's ministry. But what about those who've only just come through that experience themselves? And so we started this ministry as an encouragement to connect with young women in our conference and to make sure that there was something there specially for them. As you're aware, there are many different ministries throughout the North England Conference, and we are just one of those. And there are 2 different initiatives that we are looking to do this year. One of them is taking place tonight, and that is Girls' Night In. Now, can I see the hands of anybody who was at Girls' Night In last year? We've got a few people. I had such a great time last year. It was our first time doing something like this, and we had no idea how it was necessarily going to play out, but it was such a blessing. There was such a beautiful group of young women there, and the atmosphere was just really, really lovely. And so we're planning to do that again this year. The theme this year is Sisters. So it's celebrating sisterhood, building friendships as young women, and looking at what is important in terms of ensuring that friendships remain positive, because obviously there's a stereotype that women can pick at each other, that we can be jealous, that we can be catty. That's not the case, and as Christian young women, we want to celebrate sisterhood. And so that's taking place tonight.
Can I just do that? It's kind of weird trying to whisper with this on. Can I just do this section? Anyway, I'll just do this section for the guys' night in.
Yeah. Basically, we planned girls' night in, and then the guys were like, "Oh, orcs, there's nothing for us." So we've got guys' night in.
Okay, yeah. With our guys' night in, guys, we have a fantastic program in store for you. One thing that we'll be getting is Sebastian Braxton doing a devotion at the back. No, he didn't hear his name, but yeah, he'll be doing a devotion for us. And we just have a wonderful program planned and in place. Now, I'm in the same position that Filiae Day. they were
Filia Day.
the position that they were in last year. This is the first time doing the guys' night in, and it's going to be in here, in this very room, and it's going to be a huge blessing. So come out, have fun, and the theme is be a man. Because I think that very often, as guys, our manhood is often challenged with that statement. If someone's crying, they'll be like, be a man up. So it's usually used in a negative statement. But then, if we don't know what it means to be a man, then we won't know how to respond to that challenge to be a man.
Okay, so I'm just going to quickly add on. This is tonight, so Girls' Night In and Guys' Night In will be tonight. The Girls' Night In is at a venue. Many of you, when you came in, there's like a little roundabout by the main entrance, and there are some buildings around there. It's going to be in one of those buildings, and I will announce the name this evening. So it's taking place straight after the service this evening. We'll announce the venue, and we'll also be going from there. I think it's called Yaks. It's called Yaks, just Yaks, yeah? So that's the venue. As I said, it's by the roundabout as you're coming in, so it's quite a central location. It's not too far from here. We will announce that later, as I said, tonight, and also people will be going from here over to the venue for us to have Girls' Night In. So I'd encourage everybody to come. It's for all ages in terms of from teenage years up, so you're more than welcome as a teen or as a young woman. It will cater to all ages, and we'd love to have you there. And then finally, just as the promo, again, a first for us, and something that we're very excited about, very, very excited about. It's our first Young Women's Retreat. It's an NEC Young Women's Retreat. It's been sponsored by the North England Conference Youth Department and the Women's Ministries team, and also by the BUC Women's Ministries Department. It's going to be the 11th to the 13th of September, and it's going to be based in Birmingham, and we've tried to do that so that obviously it's a convenient location for people to travel to. Most people should be able to kind of commute to Birmingham. Even if it's a long distance, at least there should be trains or whatever that should enable you to get there. It's going to be such a packed weekend at the moment, just to give you some highlights. One of our fellow young women's ministries in the NEC, Women Set Apart, are hoping to be in attendance to take our morning devotional slots. We're going to be having different workshops on various topics. At the moment, we're looking at relationships. We're going to have a musician-songwriters workshop. There should be hopefully a health workshop, workshops on how to study the Bible. We're going to be having Bible study group sessions. There's going to be an open mic night on Saturday night for those of you that sing or are musicians or like to share spoken word. It's going to be a packed weekend. As you can see, the cost is only £50. We've tried to keep the cost down as much as possible, and we just really want to encourage you to be there. If you have any questions, you want to know any more details, as I said, our booth is over there at the back with the big banners. Come visit at any point. Come speak to me. The two members of the other members who are here of the team are on the booth, so that's Tashana and Farida. Approach any one of us. We'll be promoting on social media, and we just really want to encourage you to come. We're so excited, and we know it's just going to be such a blessing for that weekend. So we'll now go into our presentation, and I'll just take a moment to pray again, if that's all right, if you bow your heads with me. Heavenly Father, I just thank you for this opportunity, Lord, to be here. Lord, you know that this is such an important topic, and there's just so many things that we need to consider in terms of our habits. And so, Lord, I just pray that through this presentation, through the words that you've given me and Troy to speak today, that we will all be encouraged to modify, to change our habits, to build good and positive habits, Lord. And I just pray that this will truly make a difference in our lives. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Okay, so what we're briefly going to look at, we're going to cover the theory of habits and habit forming, and then we're going to do an interactive session, which is going to involve us talking to each other and also sharing from the floor. So what I'm going to look at first is, what is a habit? Now, this may be things that we all know, but we're going to go through this to kind of set the framework for what we're going to be discussing later. So a habit is a recurrent, often unconscious pattern of behavior that is acquired through frequent repetition. So last night, Dr. Walsh talked about this because he was mentioning about his presentation that he's going to be doing on stress, and he mentioned how we form habits. So it's something that you do, and as we said, it's often unconscious. You don't necessarily pay attention to when you're doing something, and we're going to go into why it can be an unconscious behavior. So how do we form habits? As we said, it's recurrent, it's a pattern of behavior. It can also be a disposition of the mind or character. So it can be a way that your character develops through repetition or through repeatedly doing something. Or alternatively, a customary manner or practice. So how do we form habits? As we said yesterday, the part of our brain that is engaged in habit forming is called the basal ganglia. When I was reading this, I just thought that is such an odd name, and it's kind of at the back of our brain, as Dr. Walsh said yesterday. So this is the part of the brain that plays a key role in the development of emotion, memory, and pattern recognition. So when you have habits and your brain is basically kicking in to do whatever it is that you're in the habit of doing, the part of your brain that deals with that is also, as we said, connected to emotion, memory, and pattern recognition. It's not the thinking part of your brain. And so that's why habits are associated a lot with how you feel. The reason habits often are so, so difficult to break is because it's associated with emotion and not with logic or logical thinking. So habits largely bypass your prefrontal cortex. So as we said yesterday, Dr. Walsh talked about the front of your brain, where he said that's the most holy place. It's the place where you think, where your logical thinking takes place, and where you decide what it is that you want to do. Habits can often bypass that part of your brain. As such, having a good habit is an excellent thing, because it means you automatically follow a pattern of positive behavior without really having to think about it. So an example that I'd like to think of, and I think we can all agree on this, having a shower in the morning. Good pattern of behavior. Can we all agree on that?
Yeah.
Yes. Let's all say amen. So the example would be when I get up in the morning, and I would say this is a weekday morning, for example, because weekends, our schedules may be different. I don't lie in bed and think, right, should I shower? When should I shower? For how long should I shower? I just don't know. Is it time? What will I do? I get up in the morning and I think I need to have a shower. It's a habit. And this is a good pattern of behavior that I am naturally in the habit of. Something strange would have to happen for me to not do that. And this is the kind of habit that we want to develop, where it's a good thing and something out of the ordinary would need to take place to stop you from doing that thing. The idea is that once you do something, it establishes a pathway in your brain, and the more you do it, the easier it is for you to then do that same thing again. And we all know how that feels. There's that first time that you do something, and it takes effort. You have to think about it. You're planning. But then the second or the third or the fifth time, you don't think about it. You just go and do it, and because you've already done it, your brain naturally adjusts. And it's interesting because the way that your brain works is that once you've built a habit, your brain works less and less while you're doing it, depending on what that behavior is. So basically, your brain almost shuts down, and so you end up doing something. You hadn't really had to think about it. So I'm sure we've all done it. You've done something, and you're thinking about something else the entire time. But you've done the task perfectly fine. When you're finished, it's done, and it's done properly. An example that I would give, and it's a kind of a newish example for me, is driving. I only passed my test last year. I used to joke that I was like the oldest non-driver around. I'd see all these teenagers driving around like, let me give you a lift. And I just used to think this is just not serious. So when I first started to drive, I was learning to drive for quite a long time, and I'm potentially what you might call a nervous driver. So I started last July, and I remember thinking, I got my car, and it's weird because it's not like I'm not a big woman, but I got my car, insured my car, and the first night I had it, I kind of said to my dad, I think I'm going to go for a test drive. And he was like, well, why are you telling me? It's your car, go about your business. And I was like, okay. So I kind of went outside, got in the car, and drove off, and I was just like, I'm alone. There's nothing going to stop me from crashing this car. I'd been learning for about 2 years. I know how to drive. I just passed my test with a stranger in the car. And I'm in the car like, and I drove to work the next morning, and literally I left for work at I think it was about 7 o'clock, so there'd be no traffic. And I had to text my parents when I got there, did you make it? Did you crash? I was like, no, I'm here, it's fine. I parked alone in an empty car park because I got here so early, no one was here. And for the first month, I felt sick every time I went anywhere. Just in case. Do you know what I mean? You do those silly mistakes that you make when you're new. And I just felt ill all the time. And now I've been driving for it'd be a year in July. And I get to work and I can't remember how I got there. Because I'm used to driving now. I pull out of my road the same way every day. I do what I'm doing. I indicate, I change lanes. I drive as I drive because I've got a bit more confident now. And I get to work and I just think, I've literally driven and I was paying no attention. I drive tired sometimes. Not tired as in I'm falling asleep. Don't do that. It's dangerous. But
good advice.
Yeah, I was going to say, don't sleep while you're driving. But I'll drive sometimes and I've not had a full night's sleep and I'm a little bit tired. And I'm driving and I'm sometimes thinking to myself, you're not paying any attention. But I don't have an accident because it's habit. I've got used to it. And this is what we're talking about when we say that your brain just gets used to what you're doing and you can perform a task totally competently without even thinking about it. Now, you perform the same behaviors the same way if the circumstances are the same. So at home, you do things in a similar way because your schedule is often similar and things are in a certain place. So you'll move around your house in the similar way in the morning because you have to get up at a certain time every day. And the things you need to do are the same every day, and the things are usually in the same place. So this becomes important when it comes to breaking a habit, so long as we know that this is often the way that the brain works. So we're going to just briefly cover a pattern of the way that we form habits, and that will help us to understand how we can break them. So a habit has 3 stages. There's the cue, the behavior, and the reward. So your habit is cued by something. Something happens that makes you do the behavior or the habit that you have. So a habit may initially be triggered by a goal, but over time that goal can become less necessary and the habit becomes automatic. So for example, the example I found when I was researching is somebody is watching TV. They're watching TV and the program they're watching finishes. That's the cue. Oh, my program's finished. So the behavior is they get up and they go to the fridge and they look in the fridge to see what's there. I'm tiring Troy out, sorry.
It's all right. It was actually Frida and Tashawn and Tom to sit down.
So back to what we were saying. You're watching TV, your program finishes, and you think, oh, the program's done. Let me get up and go to the fridge. You go to the fridge, you look to see what's in the fridge, you pick out whatever, and you eat. How many of us just do that, as we said, from habit? I have a habit when I'm on the phone, I can't really multitask. It's a myth when they tell you that all women can multitask. We really can't. Me and my best friend are the same. We're literally useless. If we're on the phone, we can't do anything else, or if we have to do something else, my best friend will be talking to me, and I'm not listening to a word she's saying. She's talking. I'm like, I don't know, I'm doing this. So anyway, I will be on the phone to my best friend, and I'm also trying to cook. So I'll go to the fridge, I open the fridge, and I'm looking in the fridge. And I keep going back to the fridge because I know I want to eat. So I know there's something in there that I need, but I can't concentrate enough to figure out what it is. But the habit just takes me to the fridge. And I don't know if you've ever heard this, but they often say in the breaks between soaps, the supplies of electricity, I don't know quite how it works, but it goes through the roof because the soap breaks, everybody gets up, oh, it's time for tea. So they go into the kitchen, put the kettle on, make a cup of tea, come back to watch their program. Habit. It's how people are used to doing things. So the cue is something taking place which triggers your behavior. Then the behavior itself is actually the act or the pattern of activity that has been triggered. This is the thing you either want to encourage or the thing you want to stop doing if the habit is bad. And then you have the reward. So common sense kind of tells you the reason you repeatedly do something is because your brain derives some form of pleasure from that behavior. You don't do something if you don't like it. Nobody sits there and sticks pins in themselves because it hurts. There's no reward from doing that. But if I am watching TV, I go to the fridge and get my cake out, I eat my cake, all the dopamine comes to my brain, I feel happy. That's why you eat cake. That's why we eat cake and not carrots. You don't get much dopamine from carrots. So the reward, and so the cue and the reward are often the 2 things that we need to focus on the most, but they're the 2 things we neglect. So why should we form right habits? Why is it important? Why does it matter that our habits are good? It sounds like common sense, but I'm just going to read 2 short quotes from Sister White, where she talks about the reason why habits can be so important. She says, character does not come by chance. It is not determined by one outburst of temper, one step in the wrong direction. It is the repetition of the act that causes it to become habit and molds the character either for good or for evil. Right characters can be formed only by persevering, untiring effort, by improving every entrusted talent and capability to the glory of God. Instead of doing this, many allow themselves to drift wherever impulse or circumstances may carry them. This is not because they are lacking in good material, but because they do not realize that in their youth, God wants them to do their very best. So the importance of your habits are, as a young person, your brain is still malleable. The older you get, the more set in your ways you are. We all know that. We all have parents. You see how your parents are. You try and get your parents to do something slightly out of the ordinary, and it's like shocking. Like, why don't we put things over there? No, we can't put them there. They've always been here. And it's like, but that's impractical. It's in the way, but we still can't move it. Habits. we are growing into those people. We will become like that the older we get. So it's easier to establish good habits as a young person when we still have the ability to change, when we're still growing into our schedule, when we're still making the choices that determine the rest of our lives. Habits form character. We all know that. Habits form character. Character is the only thing we can take to heaven. Many of us indulge the bad habits and the bad traits of our character like they're pets. We think it's no big deal. Oh yes, I like to run my mouth, but it's fine. It's not fine. That's the character you're taking to heaven. And as far as I'm aware, we won't be running our mouth in heaven. So all of these different things, they're habits that we think are funny. But do you see what I mean? Yeah. It's a serious thing. These are all things that we need to be reflecting on and looking to change. That quote that I just read, was taken from Child Guidance, page 164, paragraph 1. And I'm going to read a further quote. This is taken from Acts of the Apostles, page 312 and paragraph 1. Every habit or practice that leads into sin and brings dishonor upon God must be put away, whatever the sacrifice. The blessing of heaven cannot attend any man in violating the eternal principles of right. One sin cherished is sufficient to work degradation of character and to mislead others. So we may think, I have hundreds of good habits. I eat healthily, I go to the gym, I have my Bible study every morning, I'm a kind person, I don't get angry, but there's this one thing I like to do, and it's a small thing. You could say, my one thing I like to do, I like to look at dodgy images on the internet. Maybe not even, say, pornographic images, but just things you shouldn't be looking at. And you're like, it's one thing, it's no big deal. It's not that much of a problem. Ellen White is saying here, one sin cherished is going to ruin your entire character. All that good that you think you're doing, all the positivity in your character that you think you see, that one thing can grow. Because the whole point is that one small thing is something you've not surrendered. And as soon as you haven't surrendered it, that belongs to Satan. And you are not stronger than Satan. So whilst you have that one thing in your life, he's working. He's not stupid. He's making you think it's a small thing until that small thing grows. And we've all been there where we've had some small habit and we've convinced ourselves it's under control. You let things slide, all of a sudden that small habit is a big one. And you turn around and you don't even know how it happened. Or you started off living your life a certain kind of way, and then you turn around and you've been doing something and it's just crept up on you. And that's the problem with habits. They're easy to form sometimes, but hard to break if they're bad. So let's now kind of bring it home. Let's analyze a common habit. I'm going to bring it home to something that we probably all do. I'm not going to ask for a showing of hands, actually. Checking social media when we wake up in the morning. I'm sure we've all done that. It's literally you wake up, and the first thought on your mind is not, good morning, Lord. Thank you for waking me up. Your first thought is Facebook. What's happened since I've been asleep? Or let me check my Insta. Or Twitter. What's been going on Twitter while I've been asleep? So let's examine that in light of what we've just said, the 3 stages. You have the cue, you have the behavior, you have the reward. So your cue is waking up. If you've got yourself into that habit, you wake up, what's the first thought that comes into your mind? For many people, check my Facebook, check my messages, who's been emailing me. So you wake up and that's the first thing that comes into your brain. So that's the cue, you're waking up. It's the start of your day. What's the behavior? It's you actually going onto whatever site it is to check. So some of us will wake up, our phone is next to us. Often we sleep with our phone right by our bed. So you wake up, your phone's there, you open your phone up and you're like, oh, Facebook, you go straight there. Oh, I've got messages. Oh, I've got notifications. What's the reward? Potentially the reward is, I'm popular. It's a sad time if you wake up and you check your Insta and like no one's just commented on anything. Or you've got no notifications, no messages. But the reward is, oh, so-and-so messaged me. Oh, I'm planning this for tomorrow. Oh, I'm going to go here. Oh, I know what's happening. You feel like you know, like you're connected. You feel like you've connected with your friends. I know what so-and-so is doing today. I know what's taking place. This has happened. Potentially, and some of us are going to turn around and say this isn't the thing, but this is what people do. People check up on people. Oh, I've seen so-and-so and this happened to her. Oh, well, now I know that she's up to this, or now I know that this is happening to so-and-so. It could be your friend, it could even be your enemy, but you know what's going on. The reward is you feel connected, you know what's happening. This is my day, and I can start my day knowing what's taking place. So based on the idea of common habits that we have and looking at how we've broken down how habits work, how do we then look at changing the bad habits that we have? And the way that we need to do this is to analyze our behavior to actually establish what habits we have. Because the very first thing that we said is our habits are often unconscious. You often don't think at this stage, if it's an ingrained habit, about doing it. It's just something you do. And so you have to look at yourself, look at your life in order to really see your habits as they are or for what they truly are. So we're going to go through a few steps now to analysing your habits. And then we're going to go into our interactive activity to look at working out how we can change those habits, or to build a personal plan for ourselves in terms of bettering the habits that we have. So first of all, we are encouraged and counseled to pray and ask God to reveal to us patterns of behaviour that are drawing us away from him. There are sins in our lives that we don't even know that we have. I think we may have all heard that concept before. There are sins in your life or things that you do that you may not even realise. And so you have to go to God and ask him to reveal those things to you. And as the Holy Spirit works in your life, you will see things in your behaviour that before were just to you unconscious, or that you just did and didn't realise were a problem. Another good way to do this is for a week, make a note of your schedule each day as you're doing things so that you can observe, written down what you're actually doing. And this is an important concept. And the example that I drew from this is, how many of you guys have seen programs like, is it Super Size, Super Skinny, and things like that? Have we seen those kind of ones? They do them a lot on Channel 4, like programs where they've got people with extreme diets or compulsive overeaters or whatever. And the way that they do these programs, they're kind of quite formulaic, is that they'll film the person doing whatever it is they're doing. So they observe them for a week and they show them the video of what they're doing. And what they often do is they get the food they've been eating and they lay it out on a table. And then the reaction is always the same. So the thing is, they've just sat there and ate 12 packets of crisps in a week, but they put it out on the table and they're like, whoa. Oh, I had no idea I ate all that food, even though they were clearly eating it. And it's the physical act of seeing everything in front of them, in black and white, if you like, that demonstrates to them what they're doing. By analysing your habits, by making a note of the things you do, it might scare you, because you might make a note for a week of your schedule. So I got up at this time. I spent this time in Bible study, hopefully. I ate at this time. Because potentially, for example, if you are a fan of TV, you might realise that you have literally spent about 40 hours a week watching TV. Because it's easy to do. You get in from work, you sit down, you just watch it, and then you go to bed. But if you do that as soon as you get in till you go to bed, that's probably 4 hours a night. Add that up and it comes to a lot. But sometimes we don't think about it because it's not there in black and white. So if you're writing down your habits, if you're looking at the time that you spend doing certain things, it will help you see how you spend your time and potentially the negative areas that you are focusing a lot of time on. Make a list of the habits that you would have in a perfect world, and then contrast that with your current behaviour to help you identify your weaknesses. So again, it's all about self-awareness. Sometimes you think your habits aren't that bad. But if you were to make a list, if I was Leah living in a perfect parallel universe, what would I do? So my habits would probably be, I'd go to the gym 4 times a week. I'd be eating just plants. It would all be natural, whole foods, no junk. I'd get up at 5:30 every morning and have my devotion for an hour and a half before going for a run in the fresh air. Do you know what I mean? These are all the different things. But that's what you do in a perfect world, yes? If someone said, like, if you were going to make up a pretend version of yourself, you know, like for like dating websites or whatever, when people have those fake things, like, I like to garden. No, you don't. So if you were the fake version of yourself, that's what you'd say. So people say, oh, what do you do? Well, in my spare time, I like to read not novels, I like to read books on European history and browse art galleries, and that's what you'd like to do in an ideal world. If you make a list of that and then contrast it with what you actually do, sometimes that shows you potentially how bad your habits are, because you're looking at what you actually want to be and then looking at who you are, and you can identify, okay, so I want to be going to the gym 4 times a week. I actually go to the gym 4 times a year. The contrast. Whereas if you're talking about it normally, you might be like, oh, I went to the gym last week. Oh, it's fine. But that's nowhere near what you want to be doing. So this can be an ideal way of seeing where you want to be and identifying where you are currently. So I'm now going to pass over to Troy, who's going to take over and lead us through our group discussion and also a plan for identifying and improving our own personal habits.
Okay, well, the plan comes slightly after, but now, Leah, are you going to be taking the roaming mic around to people?
I can do.
Okay. Or, have a willing volunteer. Now, what we're going to look at, we're going to interact, look, and discuss some questions around habits. So for this, you will need your Bibles for a few of them. We'll see how your habits can be a spiritual issue. So now, if we say, like, with the person next to you, you can take like 30 seconds to discuss this. So you define a habit and relate it to Galatians chapter 6, verse 7 and verse 8. And the question is, how does this help us to understand the root of our habits. Because obviously, if you want to kill something, like if you want to kill a plant, you want to like get it at the roots. Otherwise, it's always going to keep on growing back. So in Galatians chapter 6, verse 7 and 8, first we want you to define a habit and then answer, how does it help us to understand the root of our habits? Whenever you're ready, throw your hand up, and then, sorry, what's your name again, sorry? Then Munya will take the mic to you. Okay, so is anyone ready with an answer? We're kind of pressed for time. I think it ends at 11:45. Munya, where are you? Munya, give me a wave. Oh. Yeah, Tukuzu, come forward. Oh, yeah, he's bringing the mic. So Tukuzu was just about to answer our question, how does this help us understand the root of our habits?
Yeah, Mike. Well, our answer is that if you read verse 7, it says that be not deceived. God is not marked for whatsoever man shall sow, that shall he also reap. Mm-hmm. Because habits are formed because if you do something repetitively so many times. Oh, sorry. Yeah. Because you do something repeatedly so many times, that's when it becomes a habit. So because you have to take responsibility of those habits, that's it.
Okay, thank you. So then actually, has anyone else got an answer? My brother there, next to Chantal.
We just got a one-line definition. So a habit is something that it's something that you embed in the current of your daily life, and we're looking at the imagery of a plant and see how it grows, and the seed is originally there, and that's from that it springs forth the fruit of whatever you put there. So there's something that kind of it's a natural reoccurrence of your experience.
Yeah, sure. I'd agree with that, because if we think that habits, they're formed by actions. So have you ever been like walking down a trail, like you've gone for a nice nature walk on Sabbath, and then you kind of get lost in the path, and then you see an area where the grass and the plants have been trodden away, so it looks like people have gone through there. And then maybe on the other side, it's just grass and bush. You're always going to take the option that where the path's being laid out before you. So with how habits work in your mind, as the action is repeated, the grass and the flower, so to speak, they're being trodden down, being worn away. So like Leah said, when your mind comes to do this action, it's like it just follows the natural path. It follows the path that has been created. So then, with our second question, are there any hereditary links when it comes to habits? It's like a resounding yes, because I think it was Dr. Chidley. Yeah, I can't say his name. Yeah, it was the doctor, that's not Dr. Walsh, who spoke yesterday. He mentioned epigenetics. Now, I'm not a doctor, I'm just a Bible worker. So what epigenetics basically are, the simplest way I can explain it, is that the scientists have discovered what the Bible said many years ago. If someone turns to Exodus chapter 20 and verse 5, and stands up and reads this. But remember what the doctor said about epigenetics. Although it may predispose you to certain behaviors and certain traits, it doesn't mean that that's the final answer. Like you're able to break this family trend. So can someone read Exodus chapter 20? And I think it's verse 5. Where's, where's? Right.
I'll read that again.
Thank you.
You shall not bow down yourself to them, nor serve them, for I, the Lord your God, am a jealous God, visiting the iniquity of the fathers upon the children to the third and fourth generation of them that hate me.
Thank you. So can anyone see where habits may come into this verse? Where hereditary links may come in. So it says, visiting the iniquity unto the third and fourth generation. Has anyone ever been told you, okay, I'll take Abigail as an example. So I need to call her sister's name. Has anyone ever said to you, oh, Abigail, you're just like your dad, or you're just like your... Actually, yes, in her art, if anyone's seen her art, and anyone who's knows her dad's art, she is just like her father. Now, she could have taken a different course to this drawing, to this talent that she had, but over repeated actions, over repeated learning, taking the time to perfect this craft, she's formed the same habit. I'll say same habit that her dad has, cultivated this same skill, because I'm guessing that at her level of talent, she'll just wake up and just start drawing, or sleep drawing instead of sleepwalking. Now, what we're going to look at is 10 loopholes of habit. If anyone took part in the habit cycle that Peace did, you would have received this. I had permission from Craig to just lift it out of the email and put it into this slide. Now, the 10 loopholes, or the 10 excuses that we'll often use. 1, the false hope. So we'll be saying things like, oh, I can't commit to this now because I have something else to do. For me, I'm a key procrastinator. This habit comes out, I have some work to do. I'm like, you know what? I need to tidy my room first. So I tidy my room. And I can't tidy my room without, I've worked up an appetite, so I'll go make something to eat. And then I'll just keep on procrastinating through trying to get whatever I need to do done. The second one is moral licensing. So I've been so good with my diet, I can just devour this whole cake. Just doesn't make sense. Or the tomorrow. We're often putting things off, like, it's okay to stop today, I'll just pick it up again tomorrow. Or I had this one piece of chocolate, so the whole day's just ruined. I can't just restrain myself for the rest of the day. I'll just start again at a new chapter. Or then there's lack of control, the I can't help myself syndrome. Or one thing that I've done many times, preparing to fail. Do you know when you're just, you can tell that I like food. Most of my analogies will be drawn from food. But sometimes you're just like, you know what? I just feel like a good pizza. Noon, Raoul, and Eddie and Fabian will know the struggle I go through, because I made the commitment to give up dairy and these things, but pizza's one of my favorite foods. So sometimes I'm just like, No, I'm going to have a pizza. It's like, are you? No, I'm not. I'm not. So going through this wrestle, but sometimes in my head, I'm just like, you know what? I'm going to go home, go buy one, and I'm going to eat it. I'm going to enjoy it. So sometimes we prepare to fail. So Benji, do you have a question?
I mean, on all the topic of the lesson is habits, but for me, I'm looking at it, and this is from personal experience, is it habits or is it addictions? Do the two correlate? Is there anything different between a habit and an addiction? Oh, sorry.
Okay. Saved by Leah. So yeah, the questionable assumption, the label may say it's healthy. We excuse ourselves. We're like, you know what? Apple pie, it has apple in. It's part of my 5 a day, so I can have this apple pie. But again, it doesn't make sense. Or then there's the concern for others. I don't want to offend people by this, so I'll just go with the crowd just this once. And that's another way another bad habit starts forming. Or the fake self-actualization, YOLO. You only live once. Thinking that I'll just risk it all today. I'll just go for it. I'll just take the dive. Or the one coin loophole. Just asking, what's the difference if I do it this one time? this one thing just won't hurt. Or people often say, well, on my dad's side of the family, they're not really Christian. So when I'm sitting down and socializing with them, they'll be like, "Oh, Troy, just have a drink." I'm like, "You know I don't drink." And like, "Oh, what will this one time? It won't hurt you." But then these habits you have to resist. So only telling me that I've got 15 minutes, so I'll just fly through the rest. So after identifying the different loopholes, and maybe seeing which loopholes you use, can you think of ways that you can counteract these loopholes? So you know that you use this excuse. So what contingency plan can you put in place to meet this excuse? Actually, we'll in the latter part of this program, you'll get a chance to do that in pairs. So moving towards the spiritual side of things with habits, how are habits able to impact our relationship with God?
Again, from personal experience, which I can only speak from my own, we put them before Him. And again, that's why with habits and addictions, they become a blockage to Christ. I mean, I know I've sat down and Bible study with people and I haven't really got nothing else to do afterwards. I probably just want to go home and watch telly, but I'll make an excuse to leave. By the time I get home, I wish I never. So it has a massive impact on your relationship with Christ. And with somebody who's come from the background, it can send you backwards. I mean, you were just saying, your family was saying, "Oh, have a little drink, have a that." For me, I've fell for that one before, and it's took me right back to square one. So, you know, don't have a little bit. Just stick to your guns and stick to the righteous way and what we've been learning throughout our Christian lifestyle. So, our habits can have a real blockage to our relationship with Christ. And we know where Christ is not in the midst of things, we're living in darkness. And when we're in darkness, we can't see where we're going. And for me, that can only lead to destruction.
Okay, sorry, I was just trying to communicate with the AV team at the back. Thank you for that point, because that leads us right into our next question, which I think will also answer some of those things. So I believe that there's 3 key hindrances to forming godly habits. And can I have 6 volunteers to just come up? I'll give you 6 Bible verses, and we'll see the hindrances, and we'll also see how we can overcome them. So I need 5 more volunteers to just come up. All you need to do is read a Bible verse. 4 more? Yeah, yes, please. Two, 4. Yeah, okay, thank you. You have 6. So the first one, Chantal, can you read Romans chapter 17? You can get Romans chapter 17, verse 18. Okay, how we're going to do this, we're going to do problem, counteraction. So Chantal, Romans chapter 17, verse 18. Abigail, Romans chapter 6, verse 6. Benji, 2 Corinthians chapter 4, verse 4. Tukozwa, James chapter 4, verse 7 and 8. Eddie, James chapter 4, verse 4. And, sorry, I don't know your name. Sorry? Me too. Philippians chapter 3, verse 7 and 8. Yes, 2 Corinthians 4, verse 4.
What did you say,
Romans chapter 17, verse 18. Sorry, chapter 7, verse 18. Okay, so the first problem, the first hindrance which Chantal's going to read.
Romans 7, verse 18.
Yep.
For I know that in me, that is in my flesh, dwelleth no good thing. For to will is present with me, but how to perform that which is good, I find not.
So the flesh is a huge hindrance to the habits we may try and form. Abigail?
Romans 6:6, knowing this, that our old man is crucified with him, that the body of sin might be destroyed, and henceforth we should not serve sin.
So then there's a problem with the flesh, but then Romans 6:6 tells us that this old man, these old things can be crucified. They can be put to bed and laid down by Christ. Benji?
2 Corinthians chapter 4, verse 4. In whom the God of this world has blinded the minds of them which believe not, lest the light of the glorious gospel of Christ, who is the image of God, should shine to them.
So if our old habits, our old practices and lifestyles, they are and need to be crucified with Christ, and we need to surrender them down to Christ, Satan's action is to try and blind us to the light that Jesus tries to shed on our hearts and shed in our lives for the points where we need him most. Tukutua?
Therefore, submit to God, resist the devil, and he will flee from you.
Self-explanatory. Resist the devil and he will flee. James chapter 4, verse 4. Eddie?
Adulterers and adulteresses, do you not know that friendship with the world is enmity with God? Whoever therefore wants to be a friend of the world makes himself an enemy of God.
Now, the world and all its seeming pleasures, all the sparkling glitter, gold, jewelry, it seems attractive. But Philippians 3, verse 7 and 8 tells us,
But what things were gained to me, those I counted loss for Christ. Yea, doubtless, and I count all things but loss for the excellency of knowledge of Christ Jesus my Lord, of whom I have suffered the loss of all things, and count them but dung, that I may win Christ.
Thank you. You can sit down now. So, when the world presents all the things or all things we used to love doing and may even still love doing, what Paul's saying in Philippians 3, verse 7 and 8 is that we need to surrender all to God. Every single thing that we are holding dear to us, near and precious, we need to count it as loss. Leah?
Okay, so to close, we're now going to just briefly go over some points on how to change our habit patterns. So we've looked at the scriptural aspect, we've looked at identifying our habits, now we're going to look at changing them. Obviously, the spiritual aspects of changing your habits always comes first, always. Now, secular books, when I was doing my research into this presentation, most of the things that I read said, it's almost impossible to change your habits. That's what they all said. It's very difficult, takes a lot of willpower, it's almost impossible. Now, the reason that people believe that it's almost impossible is because they don't have supernatural power by which all things are possible. And so we have to take that into account when changing our habits. The quote I read earlier said clearly, Ellen White says, we need to conquer our negative traits of character. We need to conquer our bad habits. Now we know that God he's not a cruel or sadistic God. What would be cruel and sadistic is for him to tell us we need to conquer every trait of character and make that impossible to do. So it's not impossible for us to conquer our bad habits and change our behavior, but prayer is key. You cannot overcome a supernatural problem without supernatural power. And when I'm saying prayer, obviously people gives us a solution to everything. So I'm going to relate it to my personal life because I think we all have habits that we struggle with even now. That moment when you're making that decision about whether or not to do something, so you've identified the habit, you know that it's the wrong thing and you're trying to break it. That moment when you're faced with the decision to do that thing or not, pray then. You're not going to want to pray. And as I said, I'm speaking from experience because there is a habit in my life at the moment that I'm trying to change. It's not the worst habit in the world. It's not what we've just discussed. It doesn't matter. But I might say, I'm not drinking, I'm not doing drugs. It's not the worst thing. But it's something that could come between me and God. And so I need to break it. And I know from personal experience, I decide I'm not going to do it. So I'm there and I'm like, I'm not doing this today. And then you have that moment, the cue. So the cue hits me, such and such a time of day. So in the morning, I'm good. I'm not going to do this thing. But in the evening, when I would normally do it, I'm ready to then say, let me do it. And my mind is telling me, just do it. And then that is the point where I need to pray. And sometimes I do. As I said, I'm still working through this with God. And so sometimes I'm like, no, I'm just going to do it. But I'm finding that when I pray, and I've been asking God, I've been saying to him, that moment before I'm about to do something, make me think. Because as soon as I stop to think, then I can stop to pray. And so these are all the things we need to be asking God. It's not necessarily going to go away overnight. Let's be real about this. You're not necessarily going to have a habit and then tomorrow it's gone. That could be your story. It might not be. But pray. Pray when you don't want to pray. And it doesn't have to be an eloquent prayer. When I'm struggling with something, I don't sit down, Heavenly Father, we come before thee in the glory of... I'm saying, Lord, right now, I want to do this. And unless you stop me, I'm going to do it. It's down to you now. even say, for example, with devotion, getting up in the morning, I go to bed at night and I say to God, wake me up, bother me. If I need to go to the bathroom, do that. I don't know what it is, wake me up. Once I'm up, I'll have my devotion, but the getting up is the struggle. And God does all kinds of crazy things. I wake up at all kinds of random times for some silly reasons, like a bird will be outside my window, like singing, and that wakes me up. God will answer your prayer, but you need to be real and you need to pray the prayer and say, I need you to come through for me here. Okay, claim the promises of God. There are many, many promises in the Bible that we can claim. One of the things I'd recommend is Googling like Bible scriptures regarding habits or Bible promises for habits, and they'll come up with reams and reams of them. And they're there for you to read and be encouraged. Some of the ones that I think about, my personal promise that I claim on an almost daily basis is Philippians 1 verse 6. Paraphrased, being confident of this very thing, that he who has begun a good work in you will complete it until the day of his appearing. If that's not a promise for habits, I don't know what is. Because I'm like, if he's helped me to realize that I have this habit, he's going to help me to get rid of it. And I claim that promise. That has given me life so many times throughout my Christian experience that I think without it, I would have quit a long time ago. But I say to God, you promised me you're going to do this. You promised. And so you will. Try to begin new patterns of behavior while you're away from home. Now, I didn't know about this until I started researching into this topic. And the idea is interesting. I mentioned it before. You do things the same way because the circumstances are the same. So if you're at home, you get up, you go to work, you go to college, you go to school. The things are all in the same place. Here, I'm getting up at a different time. Things are in different places. There's different people around me. So the bad habits I struggle with at home, I haven't even thought about while I'm here because my schedule is different. So try to start new patterns of behavior now. We're here at camp meeting. You're in a different place, different schedule. You want to learn to start studying the Bible in the morning and try and get up earlier? Do it now. Do it this week while your schedule's all up in the air anyway. And by the time you get home, you've already had 5 days of doing this new habit. So it's important and it's key to think about opportunities where your schedule is going to be broken up and take advantage of those times. Remind yourself of the reasons why you want to change your habit. Whenever you're tempted to go back, look at the long game. So I'll give an example for me personally. I have been trying to get into the habit of exercise, largely because it helps with so many different things. My mood is better, my stress levels are lower, I'm happier. And I've been quite stressed at work for a long time now, pretty much since I was there. But very, very stressed at the moment. And I'm kind of thinking in my head, I need to go to the gym. But as we said, you know how it goes. I get home from work, I'm tired. The last thing I want to do is go to the gym in the evening. But then if I go in the morning, I have to get up at 5 o'clock or whatever to have devotion and then go. So I'm faced with that decision, and it's easy for me to turn around and say, I'm not going to go. But then I look at the long game. So to me, the long game is this. It's kind of a weird long game because I'm thinking, I'm going on holiday in X amount of weeks. Now, the reason I'm saying it's a weird end game is because no one is going to see any of me when I'm on holiday because I will be dressed like this. But still, that's a worldly concept. You know, people are like, I need to look good for my bikini. There will be no bikini on me, but still. I'm going on holiday. I want to look a certain way for my holiday. So maybe I can lose weight. I've got this many weeks. That's my goal, the end game. If I'm basing it on today, then yes, I don't want to go to the gym today. But if I don't go to the gym today and tomorrow and the day after, before I know it, it's my holiday and I still have a belly. So this is what I'm saying. This is the kind of way that you need to think about these things. Look at the long game. Be held accountable by a godly friend or family member. So there should be someone that you can go to and say, I'm trying to break this habit. Pray with me, pray for me, encourage me. That person that will remind you what you are trying to do. That person who, when you say, because we've all got those friends where you say, girls can probably resonate with this. You're going into town and you say to your friend, you're with your friend, and you say, don't let me spend any money. And they're like, yeah, I've got your back. Like, we aren't going to spend anything. And then you go into a shop, pick up a dress. She's like, oh my days, buy it. And then you're like, I thought we said we weren't spending much. No, but it looks amazing on you. You should totally buy it. Buy 3. And you're like, this is just not the point. You need those friends who are going to help you stick to your resolve, who when you try and talk them into changing what you've resolved to do, will talk you back round. Know when to ask for help. And this comes to the point that my brother made. There is a difference between addiction and habit. Addiction is an illness. A habit can develop and you have the power to say no to a certain extent. You choose the thing that you're going to do. An addiction is a compulsion. It's something that you are almost compelled to do and you can't necessarily break the habit by yourself. know when to ask for help. If you have an addiction, you may need to get outside help. You may need to go to someone who knows what they're doing, who can guide you and lead you through that. So if you are addicted to something, seek help. Professional help, but godly Christian professional help. Don't try and deal with it by yourself, because you may be stuck in a cycle of addiction that you can't break, and the more you struggle with it is the more discouraged you become. So learn...
Can I also add, if anyone is struggling with addictions, speak to Dr. Eric Walsh whilst he's here. He has fantastic stuff on addictions. Ready help, they're available for you.
And there are also people within the conferences who can help you. So the health ministries directors of each conference, for example, if you approach them and say, I'm struggling with such and such an addiction, they can point you in the right direction to get help. But don't try and face an addiction alone. Recognize it for what it is and go to the right avenue to gain victory over it. Finally, fill your mind with things that will encourage you in developing the habits you want. Again, I'm just going to be real here. Often we'll say, I want to develop a good habit of prayer and Bible study. So we say that, yes? We often say that. In the evening, I'm going to spend time with God and I'm going to pray before I go to bed. Then this is what we do. We get in from work, we sit down in front of the TV, we watch Empire, then we're like, okay, I'm done. Let me go pray. No one wants to pray after watching certain things. Can we agree?
Yeah.
Okay. Or we might say, for example, my friends at work, Game of Thrones, I've never seen it, but I've heard it's just vile. Like literally my friends from work will say, oh, it was horrible, but I made myself sit through it. Okay, that makes no sense. So then we'll say, oh, let's watch Game of Thrones, and then I'm going to go and study Hebrews. You're not going to go and study Hebrews. You're not going to do it because the two things are diametrically opposed. However, if you've just been listening to a sermon, say from one of your favorite speakers, or you've been reading a Christian blog online, or you've been talking to a godly friend, then you might want to study the Bible because your friend's been encouraging you, you've been talking about developing good habits, and then you go to study. You're in that frame of mind. People aren't going to like this, but it's how it goes, and this is a struggle for me too. The things I indulge in that aren't pointing me to Christ, I like doing them. When I watch whatever I'm watching, it releases a happy chemical in my brain. I like it, I'm relaxed, but it's not leading me to Christ, so it has to go. And that's the important thing. Fill your mind with things that will encourage you to develop the right habits. If you don't be surprised if you struggle. Now, we were supposed to have an activity time, but we are out of time. So I'll let Troy summarize it so that we can go and do it in our own time after this session, and then we'll wrap up.
Okay, yeah, you see this as kind of like the challenge or the charge. The idea was that in pairs you're going to plan, identify bad habits you want to break, or as we learned, replace, and then come up with a way to replace them, come up with a contingency plan. Because here's the thing, how important contingency plans are. If you go to a bank for a business loan and you do not have a contingency plan, so you can't say to the bank, in case such and such happens, this person's going to take over, or this will happen, they will never, ever give you a loan. They will not trust you with a penny of theirs. So then what the model was, if you can take a picture of this slide, if you've got your phones, what were you going to do? You were going to identify the old habit, identify the root cause, so see if you can find out where this action first came from, and then recognize when, where, and how the habits manifest itself. So for instance, I'm going to go have Bible study, but Empire's on. So maybe you could put the time where you would, so instead of having Bible study after Empire, you could set your time for Bible study during Empire. So you literally have to say to yourself, I'm going to choose God, or I'm going to choose this TV show. And then has everyone who needs this slide got that? And then what we were going to do for the new habits, you were going to identify the new habit you wanted, look at the contingency plan. So in case I feel like getting this pizza, I'm going to, and then the motivation and reward for the new habit, and a Bible verse for encouragement. Eric Walsh spoke about that yesterday. And also the accountability that Leah spoke about. Now, as only showing me my time is up, I'm quickly going to wrap up by saying, he's not putting the thing down. Quickly going to wrap up by saying that if you go over to the Peace booth, Joe Philpott's there right now, but if you go there, write down your name and your email address. Peace actually ran a habit cycle. It had a whole habit thing of prayer. You get added to like a WhatsApp group or something where you already have that accountability. Now, the benefits of this WhatsApp group of having the interaction When you're going through the moment where you want to give in to the old habit, send a WhatsApp, guys, pray for me. Everyone knows, everyone will just know, okay, I have to pray for Troy right now. I have to pray for BK right now. So you have that external help, or you're all helping each other to formulate this new and this positive habit. I think the next habit cycle starting in July, I promise I'm wrapping up, and to quickly wrap up, being part of that habit cycle, it's literally changed my relationship with God. At the moment I went into it, have you ever been in that place where like you pray, you're like, yeah. You study your Bible, you're like, yeah. But then after I took part of the habit cycle, after I identified the points, I sought God, I just let everything go to God. After that, like it's like I had a whole new lease of spiritual life. So I implore you, I charge you to go to the peace booth, write down your name and email address, and be blessed. So we're just going to wrap. I'm just going to pray to close right now. I'm actually going to do this now. I could go on for a while. Can I? No, I'm joking. So we're just going to pray to close. Lord, thank you for this time where we've been able to look into habits, about how they're formed, how they can be used positively and negatively, Lord. I just ask that each of us now, whether it's habits or a further form of addictions that we're struggling with, that we really take up this charge, Lord, that we come to you in prayer, that we unite together, and that we just are able to be honest with you, Lord, to just empty all of ourselves to you, so that we know each area in our life, when we need you to help us. Let us be truly there for one another, Lord. We see through the Bible that many people, many prophets, at some point they got discouraged because they felt alone. Lord, there's many people here in this room, in the church, on our phones, who can be there for each other. I just ask that you create that love and that genuine care for between all of us, so that we can just be here shining as your true people. In Jesus' name I pray, amen.